Hey everyone, my name is Ashley Jeromchek, and for this I did cargo hose rupture and release of anhydrous ammonia. What happened in this accident was on July 15th, 2009 at 8 a.m. in Swansea, South Carolina. A hose ruptured after a transfer from a Warner Transportation Service cargo truck to a Tanner Incorporated storage tank. The rupture caused anhydrous ammonia to be released into the air, which is toxic by inhalation. The gas moved through the parking lot, across the highway, and into a wooded area that was also residential. Here's some pictures of the accident. There wasn't too many available from what I could see and from my research, but I do like the picture on the left that shows the large mass of cloud that really covered the road and how much gas there was that dispelled all the way from the facility all the way to the wooded area. It was a great deal of gas. During this time, after the gas had been released and had moved towards the wooded area, a motorist was driving through the clouds. She couldn't see, so she stopped her car, got out of her car, and actually died from the inhalation of gas. There were also 14 other people who experienced side effects, including dizziness and respiratory issues. But only 7 of the 14 needed to go to the hospital for treatment, and they were released the same day. Even the plants in this area were affected by this. They were actually temporarily discolored from the gas. Just some information about what anhydrous ammonia does. It causes immediate burning to the nose, throat, and respiratory tract. It is actually extremely corrosive, which is why it destroys the airway and results in respiratory failure. And that's what happened to this woman shown in the picture. This is Jacqueline Gignard. She was 38 years old. She's the woman who died. She was just driving on her way to work when she ran through the gas and got out of her car to see what was going on. The ammonia can also cause burns and skin and eye irritation. So, a little bit about the timeline of the events that occurred. It actually started the day before, on July 14th, 2009, when the Warner cargo truck arrived in Tampa, Florida, around 9:39 p.m. The truck received it was recorded that 39,516 pounds of anhydrous ammonia was loaded onto the truck, and about 10:40 at night, it headed out towards South Carolina. The next morning, on July 15th, around 7 a.m., it arrived at the Tanner facilities in Swansea, South Carolina. About 7:40, the truck driver parked and connected the hose and vent line. And the driver did that, and then a Tanner facility employee took the other end of the hose and began unloading the gas from the cargo truck to the storage tank. The Tanner plant trainee was left to watch the volume gauge to ensure that it was unloading properly. The driver actually went back into the truck and sat on the driver's side. Unsure what he was doing at that time, but he left the trainee to watch the gauge to make sure that everything was working properly. Just before 8 o'clock, about 7 minutes into the transfer, the trainee heard a loud popping noise. He saw the gas, and he immediately rushed to press the emergency shutdown button. He was also trying to find a facility shutdown switch, but was unable to because the glass had pretty much distorted his view and was moving towards him, so he needed to evacuate promptly. The driver at the same time heard the same pop. He stopped the trailer pump, put on a mask, and evacuated as well. So here's a timeline of events as well from the emergency response point of view. So another employee from the Tanner facility saw the gas leak and heard it and was able to contact the Lexington County Communications Center at about 7:57, so right when it happened. The fire service was immediately dispatched and arrived on the scene around 8:07. Later, the Lexington County Emergency Management Department was contacted by a Tanner representative. The representative stated that 100 to 500 pounds of gas were released, And that was pretty much, they also made note that they were worried about the residents in the area and wanted the emergency management department to ensure that the residents were staying in their house to be protected while the gas had been released. There was a lot of different emergency services involved in this to help try to prevent as much damage from happening from this accident as possible. So they all met together in a unified meeting about 9:05. At 9:12, they went their separate ways. The fire services went to search for individuals in the area that might have been affected by the accident, and around 9:25 is when they found the fatally injured victim, Miss Jacqueline Ginyard. She was near her car and had passed away at that time. And they found others that had more severe respiratory issues and were sent on their way to the hospital. The South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control arrived at 9:50 and began taking air samples. And by 11:25, they had claimed that the air was all clear and it was again safe. Different findings for why this accident occurred and for the different safety issues that happened. So one was the use of chemically incompatible hose assembly, insufficient procedure for unloading, inadequate monthly inspections and annual leakage tests, inadequate cargo hose requirements for emergency discharge. And we'll talk about each of these individually. So the use of chemically incompatible hose. The hose that was used during this transfer was called a Duradyne product number DDG220. This material that is used in this hose is not compatible for anhydrous ammonia, and that's why the hose failed. There was actually a bunch of warnings and the packaging for this, like everywhere for this hose, that stated that it was not compatible with anhydrous ammonia. It stated what it was compatible for. There was also a great deal of this company puts a great deal of warnings that say check your hoses often, ensure that your hose is working properly, do tests for leaks. They really want to make sure that these hoses are being used properly. So it was air on part of the Warner Company, which we'll talk about next. The insufficient procedure for unloading. There was no verification if the hose was compatible during the pre-transfer protocol. So during the time when they were in Tampa, they should have recognized that that hose was not going to be compatible with the ammonia and should not have been used for this transfer. And that was on fault of the Warner Company. There was also an issue with the inadequate monthly inspections and annual leaks. The Warner Transportation Services Incorporated actually had incomplete and incorrect inspection records of their cargo trucks. The other issues can actually be more led to the Title IX Code of Federal Regulations. There's a great deal of discrepancies and just not very clear regulations for what needed to be happen for the inspections and leak tests. So Title 49 Code of Federal Regulations does not clearly state the inspection expectations. It also calls in-service cargo hose assembly motor carriers that need to be inspected, but it doesn't give a description of what counts as in service. So many companies defer the monthly inspections because they don't believe that their motor vehicle is in service. And also there was the inadequate cargo hose requirements for emergency discharge. This also goes to the Title 49 Code of Federal Regulations. It There's nowhere in the regulation that takes into account the rupture of a cargo hose and gives guidelines for the procedures of what needs to happen when this occurs. The outcome of gas released in either situation of a rupture or a full separation of the hose has significant consequences because the gas will be released. And there needs to be a procedure, a requirement, a regulation of some sort that explains what needs to be done in this type of situation. So, different recommendations for how this accident could be prevented in the future or how it could be better handled. One of the recommendations is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration puts out a safety advisory bulletin to inform cargo tank owners and operators of this accident that happened and the actions that could have been done to prevent it, and to also encourage these owners and operators to do testing to make sure that their hoses are compatible, to really try to push the faults of this accident to making better choices in the future to prevent another one from happening. Also, to require cargo tank owners and transfer facilities to verify compatible hoses and drivers, that hoses are compatible before the transfer begins. Then the other recommendations had to do with amending the Title 49 Code of Federal Regulations, which includes a criteria for an in-service cargo transfer hose assembly, and understanding what it means that a vehicle is in service and the qualifications of that. Also, to amend the requirements for passive emergency shutdown for hose failure to give some sort of guideline of what to do and what needs to happen during that situation. And also, finally, to clarify the testing and record keeping for cargo hose assemblies and tanks, so that these owners and operators can know what they need to be testing, what they need to be recording, and how often they need to be doing these things. Here are my references. Thank you so much. That's all I got.